Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for a very exciting event featuring Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Fidelity Investments and two-time Tufts parent, Abigail Johnson. Tonight's program is hosted by the Tufts Financial Network, or TFN, which is the university's affinity group for alumni, parents, and friends working in financial services. Over the past 12 years, TFN has engaged hundreds of jumbos through its speaker series events in New York City and Boston. In addition, the group connects members directly with current students in search of career advice, networking, and mentorship. More recently, TFN has created targeted engagement opportunities for alumni, including an annual women's event in New York City. While I can imagine our TFN alumni and friends miss meeting in person, I hope tonight's virtual program will serve as an acceptable alternative until it is safe to gather again. Beyond the women of TFN, we are also delighted to make this evening's program open to all jumbos, including current students who are now in their first week of classes for the spring semester. To them, I say, welcome back, and what an exciting way to kick off the second half of the academic year. To get us started, I'm going to turn the program over to this evening's moderator, Diane Hessan. Diane is an alumna of the class of 1976 and a member of the university's Board of Trustees. Like Abby, she's also a jumbo parent. Beyond Tufts, Diane is a successful entrepreneur and researcher and currently the founder and chairman of C-Space. In addition, she is also an author and columnist for the Boston Globe. Diane, I know you have played an important role in making this event a success, so along with your moderator duties, thank you for volunteering your time to prepare and be with us this evening. What an exciting night for Tufts. Thank you all again for choosing to spend it with us. And with that, please join us in welcoming Diane Hessan.
Thank you, Tony. And hello, everyone. This afternoon, we have the privilege of hearing from Abby Johnson, the chairman and CEO of Fidelity Investments. Fidelity has been a trusted household name for almost 75 years, and Abby, who has been with the company since 1988 and who has served as CEO since 2014, is well known for her leadership of the financial services powerhouse. So Fidelity has, get this, 35 million individual investor customers, $9.8 trillion in assets under administration. It executes 2.2 million trades each day and employs 47,000 people. A graduate of Hobart and William Smith Colleges and with an MBA from Harvard Business School, Abby is also, most importantly, the mother of two daughters who both graduated, yes, from Tufts University. She also serves on the board of directors of the Associates of Harvard Business School and the Corporation of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. All right, the way we're going to work this session is I'm going to have a conversation with Abby for the first half, and then we'll open the session up to live questions from two current students and two alumni. Okay, let's do it. Abby, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Thanks, Diane. It's really great to be here, and thanks for hosting the event.
Yeah, well, we have a great turnout here, so I don't think it's because I'm the moderator. I think it's because you're the guest, and I have a million questions for you about your career and about Fidelity and the industry and your advice for us. So, Abby, let's just start at the beginning. You know, Fidelity was started by your grandfather in 1946. Your father came in and grew it from a boutique into this financial services giant. So what was it like growing up with Fidelity in the family?
Well, I guess it was like anything that you grow up with, you're just kind of used to it. And I don't know, perhaps the two jumbos in my family might be better able to answer this question since they have more perspective on it in recent years than I do. So I always remember just hearing about the business, and both my father and my grandfather had quite a bit of passion for the industry and the business that they each ran. I certainly never envisioned myself being able to do what they were able to do, because it just always seemed so amazing and so overwhelming to me. But I think it was always interesting to have that exposure and just have a little casual understanding of what was going on. And so it was impossible not to learn just a little bit about what was happening in the business. I graduated from a liberal arts school, and so I had a similar education to a jumbo education. And it was interesting because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I was prepared to try a lot of different things. And I did get some experience working at Fidelity during the summers when I was in college. So I had a little bit of a sense of what the industry was like, more at a kind of an operating level, because that's the kind of job that you get when you're a college summer intern. And when I graduated from college, I knew I was interested, but I wasn't really sure. So I wound up taking a job in New York, working in the strategy practice of a consulting firm. And that was really great because it exposed me to the discipline of business analytics. And then eventually, a couple of years after that, I went to Harvard Business School, which really got me much more tuned into what a business career was really going to involve. And I was really excited by it, and I found it stimulating and challenging. I liked the intellectual challenge, but I also liked the people challenge. And so I joined Fidelity full time as an analyst. I'd had the opportunity to be a summer intern analyst during my summers around business school. And so that was really exciting. And then it was just kind of got in there and got really excited about investing and doing research, which involved a mix of quantitative skills and qualitative skills. And I found that I really got hooked on it.
Yeah. And so let me go back a little bit. Like, was it assumed in your family? I know you had siblings. Was it assumed that you would go into the family business? Were you pressured to? I mean, would your father, grandfather say, someday this could be?
I mean, it was like, hey, this is a great fun business. If you ever want to try it, you might really like it. But there was never any pressure. Absolutely not any pressure. I mean, I remember hearing stories about family members of my parents' generation who had been pressured into doing one thing or another, and they were never really happy. And I think my parents were very tuned into that the path to having a happy life is not to choose the career that you get pressured into doing, but to choose the career that really is something you want to spend your time on and that you feel strongly that you enjoy being part of, because it's it's a big investment in your time and energy, and you better like what you're doing for a living if you're ever going to be good at it. And being developing expertise and performing highly is certainly something that we all aspire to. So
yeah, that's great advice. So you were saying that you went to Fidelity. When you first came to Fidelity, what was your first job? And were you worried that people would judge you as the boss's daughter instead of focusing on your skill set?
Well, so of course, being judged as the boss's daughter was definitely something that I knew I was going to have to confront. And of course, I did have to confront that, and it's okay. You get through it. I mean, everybody, has things that they feel self-conscious about, I think. And, this was kind of a big one, but, I learned to deal with it. And fortunately, in the job as being an equity analyst, you are really judged on your performance. I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with investment companies and all the jobs that investment companies have, as an analyst, your job is to make recommendations on specific investments to the funds. And so you take responsibility for covering a group of stocks, or usually an industry, and you research that industry and those companies like crazy, and you build financial models, and you build an understanding of how those companies are addressing their markets strategically, and you develop an opinion of how successful they're likely to be going forward. And then you look at the valuation of the company based on how it's trading in the marketplace today, and make an estimation of what you think it might be trading at in the future. And that's the basis of how the funds make money. So really, there's no way around being judged as to how your recommendations do around the investments that you recommend to the funds. And so is a real positive that it was a role with a very objective yardstick for measurement. And I think that's helpful, particularly in an early job in your career, because it gives you the ability to know exactly how you're doing. And sometimes you have a period of time where you do extremely well, and then you have a period of time where maybe you don't do as well, and you learn to get through those periods. But most of all, you know where you stand in terms of performance, and other people know where you stand in terms of your performance. And I think ultimately that's very confidence building. And if you work hard and really commit yourself to it, and apply yourself, you learn that you can do well, and that's also a good experience. So I think for any early career move, having that job that has an objective yardstick is, at least for certain personality types, maybe not for everyone, but people probably know what personality type they have. That can be a really good thing.
Yeah, that's such a great example, because they can't say, gee, Abby Johnson was a really great equity analyst. Must be because she was the boss's daughter. I mean, that doesn't even make sense, right? So,
well, it can't make sense. I mean, and it's a kind of job that if you, and a lot of jobs like this, like if you don't do well, you go on to your next job, and that's probably a better thing. And I mean, for me, the skills and the discipline that I learned in that first role really carried with me through the rest of my career. I still think of myself as an analyst at heart, and thinking about what are the right questions to ask, and how to get to the real important consequential matter in any situation. By asking the right questions has been for me a helpful skill set to have developed early on.
yeah, that's great. So, you've been CEO since 2014. What are you most proud of over the last 6 or 7 years?
Oh, that's a hard one, Diane. I'm really a looking forward person, not a looking back person. Maybe at some point I'll look back and think about the answer to that question, because it doesn't really feel like it's been that long.
Let's talk about looking forward, because I think everybody's really interested in that. So, for me, when I first started investing, there were only two companies, Fidelity and Vanguard. And now it seems as if everyone is getting into financial services, including Google, Amazon, and a whole range of fintechs. I mean, how do you look forward? How do you think about staying fresh and current?
Well, I think that's a really important part of any CEO's role, because we've all read stories about companies that had tremendous success for a generation and seemed to be infallible and indispensable. And, then all of a sudden something changes, and all of a sudden they're not the stalwarts that they once seemed to be. And so so I think it's really got to be at the top of the list of any CEO's job, is to be really thinking about the future and looking forward. So one of the things that I talk to Fidelity associates about quite a bit is the simple process of scan, try, scale. And what that means is all managers, everybody across the organization, scan what you see going on in the industry, scan what you see going on in across society and the community, and what's changing. And to the extent that you can, bring that thinking to your work every day. And what we need to try to do throughout the organization is try new things, and based on everybody's contributions about what they see changing, what can we try that would be something new and different. And then ultimately, some of the things that we try, not everything, will show some signs of success. And then how do we try to figure out how to make them big, which is the scale part. And interestingly, it's that last part that's the most challenging part in a big company, because we now have this culture where we practice this. So we do develop lots of observations and points of view about what's changing in the world, and we're able to turn that into ideas that we try on a small scale to try to test. And some of them have to be reworked multiple times. Some of them are good ideas, but it's just a good idea at the wrong time, so we put it on hold for a while. And some of them don't work at all, so we just move on to the next thing. And that's a big part of the culture that I've been working on building at the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you were such a great model of that, because I guess people attribute this to you, but you were so early in Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto. I mean, 5 years ago, you were doing that. So what's the story behind why you jumped into that, why you jumped into Bitcoin so early, and why you were so confident about it?
Well, it was interesting. There was a group of us, I guess this was kind of back around kind of 2012 or so, after Bitcoin kind of came on the scene, and me and a few other technology or business technology interested business types, we just started asking each other, like, is this what, we had looked at it each kind of individually on our own. Let's try to understand this and figure this out, and see if we can come to an opinion on, a point of view on whether we think this is going to turn into something. So there was a group of about, it started out as maybe kind of 8 or 10 people who started meeting on a regular basis to talk about it. And we were really just trying to understand it at first. And then, the group grew a little bit bigger, and then we started brainstorming ideas about what could this be. So kind of the try, what are some ideas that we could try? And we came up with, we brainstormed and we came up with a list of 52 use cases that we thought might be interesting things that we could do with Bitcoin or blockchain technology. And so we started enlisting different groups across the organization to actually try some of these use cases. We had so many false starts, but one of the things that we did do along the way at my insistence was buy some mining equipment, which for those cryptocurrency aficionados of you out there, you know that that's kind of the ground zero of Bitcoin is to get into mining. And we made a $200,000 investment in some mining equipment, which lots of people in finance told me was absolutely crazy. And, but we decided to do it anyway. And so that kind of got us in at the ground floor. And then as it turns out, I'll try to fast forward here a little bit, the first actual business that we launched, which was our crypto custody business, which we launched last year, almost about a year ago now, was not even one of those 52 use cases.
Because that's such a legacy.
But there was a real need for bridge strategies between the kind of old financial world and the new financial world. And what we discovered was that we were uniquely positioned to be able to do that. Now we've got a lot of other things in the queue that we've got trading now, and some other trading related businesses in the crypto space that will be rolling out this year. So it's been kind of exciting, but it was definitely risky. And you said, how was I so confident? Well, I was confident that it was going to be fun and we weren't going to lose too much money, but I'm not sure I was completely confident of anything else because it was very new space. But I think it seemed like a reasonable bet to make. And fortunately, there were a few other people at Fidelity who agreed with me, and we were able to build some critical mass and recruit some really great people who have committed their careers to this space now, which is really great. And so I think we've become a talent destination, which is exciting. And that means that we're going to continue to turn out really good offerings for any potential customers, just in the institutional space, I should point out, for now in crypto.
Yeah. So here's something that does take a lot of investment of money is technology. So I read recently that Fidelity spends about $3 billion a year on technology and employs over 12,000 people in technology roles. So, I mean, at this point, are you a technology company that just happens to be in financial services? I mean, what's the role of technology in the future? I mean, will it replace humans when it comes to customer service, or how are you thinking about tech?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. So, I mean, financial services, I would say, since the 80s has been an industry probably more than, other traditional industries that has been becoming a technology business. And that's because, what we really deal in is intangibles. And so the whole business of financial services really lends itself to technology. And I'm really talking about the back office here and all the operations of financial services. And so the back offices of financial services companies have been transforming technologically incredibly rapidly over the last handful of decades. And what you're seeing now is the front office catching up, where increasingly bricks and mortar in financial services are not just becoming less relevant, but they're becoming less desirable. And that's been one of the great outcomes of the pandemic is people realizing how much they can do without actually visiting a financial services establishment in person. So right now, we've really witnessed a change in the rate of change in the degree to which people are willing to interact with financial institutions on a digital basis. People have become much more comfortable doing bigger, more complicated transactions digitally, and that makes it easier, more convenient for people who like interacting digitally, and it's really efficient for everybody to the extent that people are comfortable with that. And it's really kind of, it's odd to think about the technology spend because it's so integrated with everything that we do. I mean, everything that we do, runs on so much complicated technology that it's just part of what we do all day.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I know I used to work in digital marketing, and that now people say that's redundant. I mean, it's just all digital.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I have to ask you about GameStop because it's on all of our minds this week. Last I checked, the stock price was down to 90. So can you just give us your thoughts on what's going on?
Oh, well, I guess I would begin by saying, I've never seen anything like this in my career. And, we haven't seen, this kind of explosion in meme stocks ever before. And, it's, there's sort of a superficial level and a much more in-depth level to examine here. I think I'm a little nervous about saying too much. I'll just be open about that because it's not like the dust has settled on this. I mean, there's still a lot happening here. If we could fast forward in time and the dust has settled, I think it's going to be interesting to look back and examine what really happened, because one of the things that is going on here is the structure of the industry. I talked a minute ago about how much the back office and operations of the financial industry have changed. And that's very much true for the equity trading markets. There have been several permutations in the structure of the market that have taken place over the last few decades. And what's starting to become exposed now is the actual behind the scenes workings of the equity trading industry. And operating groups, some key players behind the scenes who typically would not have been noticed by most people, by the investing public, frankly, by anyone except people, senior people in financial services companies or people who were deep into the operating guts of the industry. Some of those groups and companies that provide critical operations to ensure the operating integrity of the markets, but are, as I said, typically behind the scenes, are coming into view in terms of their roles in this great ecosystem that allows us to trade the equities of public companies in a very fluid way. So I don't really feel, Diane, like I can answer your question directly about what's happening.
But it
because
is interesting. It's interesting the way you talk about it, because it's like the arcane back office stuff that nobody ever thought about before is now, on the front page of the New York Times. So I think that's fascinating in itself. And I get why, if you say 5 words about it, that's also on the front page of the New York Times. So yeah, I want to talk to you a little bit about women, just to change the subject for a sec. So, financial services has not exactly been it's not exactly been a women's industry. This is a space that's long been dominated by men, and you have promoted a lot of women at Fidelity. So why is it important to you? And, why do you feel like this is a great field for women to go into? We got a lot of students who are listening tonight who might be thinking about financial services. What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, I tried to hint at that a little bit in the beginning of our conversation, Diane. Like, I think there's a lot of great reasons why anybody, but particularly women, should consider doing something like being an analyst. It's a very independent kind of a job where you set your own direction on a day-to-day basis, and you have a lot of demands and a lot of deliverables, but you actually have a lot of control over planning your time. And I think a lot of people welcome that. Now you have to obviously be responsible and deliver your results, but there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. As for our company, we have always made it a priority to be welcoming to lots of different people. And we made it a business priority a number of years ago to seek to do a better job of serving women and commit to serving women in a way that was different than the standard service model, because we recognized that the standard service model was built around a lot of assumptions that were very male driven. And when we dug deep and did a lot of focus groups, we determined that a lot of women, overgeneralizing here, I realize, but a lot of women approach thinking about their financial situation differently than men do. They don't necessarily come to different conclusions, but we saw that there was a likelihood that they might approach things in a different way. And so we developed service models to coach our reps to be able to respond to different situations in different ways. And that was more responsive to the audience, which was really helpful, and I think rewarded in our business. And I think once you get a positive cycle like that going, where you're trying to attract more women. I mean, for example, one just very basic thing that we discovered a long time ago is that a lot of women who visited our branches asked specifically to be paired with a woman representative, a woman Fidelity associate to work with. And that required—
Why do you think that is? Why would they be asking for a woman?
Just as far as they just felt more comfortable that that it was going to be easier to talk to a woman, I guess. I mean, it's hard to really say for sure, but the point is that required us to go recruit a lot more women to get into staff our branches. And so that was some time ago, and we dramatically changed how we thought about staffing our branches, and it became standard to make sure that we had enough women in any individual branch, not overall, to be able to meet that expected demand. So I think when you start to build that positive momentum with your business, then that's when you start to really institutionalize change.
Yeah, and with women, it's a growth industry, right? I mean, isn't there just a dramatic shift in assets over to
Well,
women?
there's a lot of demographic trends. I mean, the most obvious one is that women tend to live longer than men. And so lots of women will outlive their husbands or will just plain old live longer and accumulate more wealth by virtue of having more years of compounding their own wealth. So, so I think that's the trend that a lot of people are looking at.
Yeah.
But within our management ranks, I think we've tried to cultivate women managers and move them into the most senior levels of the organization. And so I think that people broadly in the organization respond well to that, which is helpful.
Yeah. So for women or men, what kinds of qualities do you look for in people that you're hiring and trying to bring into Fidelity?
Yeah. Well, naturally, it's can be very role specific, but I think that we've got a lot of roles that involve different kinds of capabilities. I mean, one common misconception is that you have to be super quantitative to come work at a place like Fidelity. And I would, really try to dissuade anyone who thinks that of believing that too strongly. I mean, yes, you have to be quantitative enough to be able to do, basic kind of math stuff that is, way under the ability of any Tufts graduate. I'm confident. It's nothing that is terribly difficult. And we have lots of roles, lots of particularly customer facing roles that are way more dependent on having a really high EQ, because lots of customers, whether they're individual investors or employers who are running our 401k plans, or other kinds of intermediaries or gatekeepers, they may not understand our offerings that well, and they may have jobs where they're buying our services, but it's not the primary thing they do, and they need somebody who can talk to them about, at a basic level, what are their needs and what are their priorities, and how can Fidelity help them. So what that means is that person, the Fidelity person, needs to first and foremost be a really good listener. And they need to be able to understand the customer's needs, the customer's priorities, where they have confidence and a strong understanding of what they want, or where they need some additional education that hopefully we can provide them. So we need those people as much as we need the people who can run the spreadsheets at lightning speeds and calculate the gamma risk and other such things.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure people are taking a lot of notes. What I want to do now is open up the floor for a few live questions. So to get started, I'm going to introduce Hannah Nelson. Hannah is a current student and a member of the class of 2021. So all yours, Hannah.
Hi, thank you, Diane. Thank you, Abby. So my question is, how did your undergraduate education at a liberal arts college prepare you for a career in the financial industry?
So that's a great question, and I'm sure that one that lots of your cohorts on the line are probably wondering too. So I think a liberal arts education is actually a great background for our industry. I feel that really strongly. I feel it so strongly. We actually started a program a few years ago just for liberal arts grads. And it's turned out to be a really popular program, because what we do is, doesn't matter what you majored in. I mean, we really aren't interested that much in what your specific major was, but if you are interested and passionate, think you could be passionate about helping people with their investments, then we're interested in you. And what we do is offer people who come into this program a chance to travel around the company and have assignments in a variety of roles, and it's interspersed with specific 2-week training segments around skill building. And what's important to us is that people who come to us with liberal arts backgrounds are people who are dedicated students and they want to learn. So if we put something in front of them, we know if you're a successful liberal arts grad, you're going to learn it, you're going to study it, you're going to understand it, you're going to think, you're going to ask questions, and you're going to understand how to communicate well, because that's a lot of what you learn from your liberal arts education. It's really about that curiosity, that questioning, that seeking to understand more, and asking why, and why not. So that we have found is something that we've been wanting to inject our company more of that.
That's great. Thank you, Hannah. Makes me feel like I want to apply for a job.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, people have studied so many different things. I mean, it's really great if you've come in, and I know, particularly from being a jumbo parent, that people at Tufts, you have all your requirements for your distributions. And so you've studied lots of things, including probably some things that weren't your first choice to study, which does kind of come into play in a business career, is that you have to know about a lot of different things. And there are times in your career where you have to sit down and learn about something that wasn't really your first choice to learn about. So that's comes into play too.
Yeah. Okay, let's get another question. We're going to welcome now Diana Duarte Pena. Diana is an alumna of the class of 2015. Take it away, Diane.
Hello, thank you, Diane, and thank you, Abby, for being here. So my question really centers around the nature of work. So the present work has changed, and future of work is expected to change in a lot of ways, with remote or distributed models being more prevalent, right? Some people working from home, some people in office. So with kind of this present future changing, right? And in light of the fact that there's so many students on, do you have any advice, or what would you recommend in this new style for young people starting out? Like, how can they stand out, stay engaged, and be strong participants?
Yeah. So all of you are probably better prepared than any of us, because you don't have all the ingrained old habits that those of us who have been working for many years do. And, particularly if you've been a student during this COVID time, you've had to learn to be flexible and be confronted with situations that you were not expecting. And in fact, you never dreamed were going to become the reality that you're living. And so thinking about the future of work, I mean, this is something that we have significant teams of people at Fidelity working on, and we're asking ourselves, what is the future of work going to look like? And from what we hear from our associates overwhelmingly is they would like it to include some component of work from home. Now, most of our associates would like to come to the office at least some amount of the time. And I'm encouraging people to think that way. I think that it is important for people who work together in a community with a shared mission, shared goals. It's important to gather and to have the opportunity to meet and interact in person when it's safe to do so. We don't know right now when it's going to be safe to do so. I get a lot of questions from Fidelity associates about when are we going to get to come back into the office? When is it going to be safe to come in? And I'm not an expert on what's going on with the pandemic. I am watching it very closely, but I am following the data and the advice of the experts. And so one of the things that we are bracing ourselves for is how long the effects of the pandemic could be lingering. But what that means is that we are expecting to keep people work from home or work from anywhere enabled. I think that's sensible contingency planning for a variety of reasons. And in fact, one of the reasons that we were able to go to work from home so quickly was because we were already going down that path, because one of the things that we have done for decades is contingency planning around New England. With our roots as a New England-based company, we worry a lot about snowstorms, and then with our campus down in Texas, we worry about tornadoes and other things. So, so we've always had a focus on being prepared to operate no matter what. And that served us really well. And that will continue to be something that we need to be prepared for, as well as any after effects of the pandemic, as well as simply accommodating different lifestyle preferences about how much time to come into the office. Some of that will be role dependent, and that's part of what we're working through right now. So in terms of advice, I'm not sure you all need that much advice, because as I said, I think you're young and you're probably pretty flexible and willing to adapt to a range of different circumstances, and that's going to be really valuable.
That's a good answer. And I know Diana, and she's already crushing it. So that was very prescient. Two more questions. Let's welcome now Simran Lala, who is an alumna of the class of 2020. Hi, Simran.
Hi, Diane. Thank you, Abby, for your insights today. The question that I have for you is centered around leadership. And I was wondering, what are some of the most key leadership skills that you've learned during your time at Fidelity, and how have they been valuable over the course of your career?
Yeah. So I think it's really helpful to think about a few leadership principles. We actually have some principles that I worked up with my leadership team that summarize what we expect everybody to practice on a regular basis. So we expect all of our Fidelity associates to be customer obsessed. That's something that really goes back to the beginning of the company. Really, what's going to be the best thing for our customer, because that's what you live with for a long time. We expect everyone to, as we say, own the outcome. And that sense of accountability is really, really critical. We're a big organization. We're prone to having silos and different camps of things. So thinking and working across the organization is really important. Trying to take the perspective of other groups around the company, not just the perspective of your group. Something that I think is particularly applicable to liberal arts people is candid debate. I think all of you practice this in your discussions, particular any seminars that you participate in. Practice candid debate is a really, really important leadership principle for us. Taking smart risks and practicing pace over perfection. So keep moving, don't get hung up in being a perfectionist. Empowering other people, helping to empower your teammates or somebody new to the organization, and coaching other people to their full potential. If you see someone who is a regular coworker of yours, maybe kind of getting off the track somewhere, talk to them in private at some point, and try to give, if you're a manager and someone who works for you, is having a hard time coaching them in a sensible way is an important leadership thing. So we've found that if we keep our eyes on these leadership practices, it helps us function better as a team. And we try to drive these practices into the organization at every opportunity.
Thanks, Simran. And our final student question, let's welcome Gabriella Dalila. Gabriella is a current student and a member of the class of 2021.
Hi, Abby. Thank you so much, both Diane and Abby, for being here today talking to us. My question for you, Abby, is given that the COVID-19 crisis has affected caregivers particularly hard as they try to balance taking care of children and elders while also working from home, do you believe that we'll be experiencing lasting scars of the pandemic on efforts to recruit women? And if so, how is the best way to address it moving forward?
Yeah. So I think, this has been a concern that has been, identified by a number of experts, and it's really, really concerning because, in our industry in particular, we've worked really hard to advance women and to recruit women, as I was speaking about earlier, and we can't afford to fall backwards. It's not like we've conquered this problem. It still to this day remains a challenge. So to have these incremental headwinds is really a problem. So it's really causing us to look again and again at what can we do to address these issues. I mean, at Fidelity, we've offered special support to people who are caregivers. We've offered, whether these are caregivers, people who are caregivers to their parents, but also to parents who have young children, and so giving them programs to help them support their young children who might be trying to learn at home, which is a very difficult situation for parents who are working. And looking at flexibility in terms of hours and schedule is something that we need to continue to push, because I am very worried that that's going to be an ongoing problem that even as we come out of the pandemic.
Thank you, Gabriella. Abby, I have one final question for you, which you're probably going to predict, but you are many things. You are a successful CEO. You are the wife of a fantastic entrepreneur. You're a leader in your community and more, but especially you're a mom of two daughters, and they both went to Tufts. So give us your thoughts about our university and your experience with us as a parent.
Yeah, well, it was fabulous being a jumbo parent, and really have always loved being part of the Tufts community. And I think the teaching culture at Tufts is really tremendous, and I think all the leadership at Tufts should be commended for doing such a great job on that front, and for keeping the students learning during the pandemic. I mean, I don't actually totally understand how all of you have done it, but keeping the school open and running is tremendous, and I think it's just amazing. So it's been great to be part of the community, and now to be invited back is really really a treat, to feel like I'm still in touch with everything that's going on, at least a little bit.
Yeah, well, we love having you on the team. We are running out of time. So you don't get to answer the question. Like, one question that came through is, how's my girl Eliza? Which I assume is one of your daughters. But Abby, seriously, this has been fantastic. You know, so many lessons this evening. How
So I
important
want
it
to
is.
know, we have to say hi to whoever
I
gave
know
a shout
whoever
out to
said that. I don't
Eliza.
even have the name. But
Eliza's doing great, and
oh,
thank
there
you
you
for
go.
asking.
So somebody
Ask her how. Well, sorry, that's okay.
Oh, go on.
she's doing great. She's in Boston, and I'm sure she would love to say hello to whoever it was who asked that.
Yeah. Well, I know I'm a Tufts parent also, and it really is a tremendous amount of fun, and you know, such a wonderful place. So many lessons this evening, how important it is to do what you love, you know, owning the outcome, taking smart risks. I love scan, test, scale, and just how great this is, you know, as a time for women in financial services. So thank you for sharing your insights and your wisdom with us. And on behalf of the Tufts Financial Network, I also want to thank the students and alumni for asking such terrific questions. Abby, I don't know if there's anything you want to say before I make a few final comments.
No, Diane, thank you I really appreciate the thoughtful questions. We covered a lot of ground here in an hour. So thanks for keeping the pace up, and hopefully there was a little something for everyone in what we covered.
Yeah, I have like 1,000 more questions. So if you would be up for spending another couple of hours, we could really have a good time, but maybe some other time. You know, the other thing I want to do here is I want to recognize the hardworking and dedicated Tufts students who are listening tonight, who are experiencing college life in the middle of a pandemic. And I also want to give a shout out to those alumni and parents who have been helping these students secure summer internships and full-time employment, which is a daunting challenge these days. If you are listening and you have opportunities for students, please send them along to the Tufts Career Center, which is easy to remember, careercenter@tufts.edu. In general, as a member of the Tufts Board of Trustees, I encourage you all to get more actively involved with the university in any way you can. Show your support, lend a hand to our students as they attempt to launch their professional careers. And that's it. I hope you all got value out of your time with us. Abby, thank you so much again, and go Jumbos.